once you have all those things in place in terms of a recruitment strategy, the technology, and it's aligned with your company objectives, you have to have the right talent acquisition professionals. You have to have the right recruiters. They have to be people who think like marketers but act like sales professionals. Everyone thinks they can recruit, but not everyone can. You truly have to love people and what's best for them in order to be an amazing recruiter. So I think those are some of the elements that are required to have an essential talent acquisition strategy.
Hi everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of All About HR. My name is Nelly, and in today's episode I'm being joined by Hermina Khara. And Hermina is the Senior Vice President, People and Culture at Alida. We had a fantastic conversation and we talked about, among many other things, what makes or breaks the candidate experience. We also talked about how Alida successfully hired over 162 people, all during the pandemic and fully remotely. And we talked about the importance of purpose today for candidates. All the more reason, I think, to go straight to this episode. As always though, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell and like this video. Thanks so much and enjoy listening. Bye! Welcome to another episode of All About HR. Welcome along, Hermina, to this brand new episode of All About HR. How are you, all the way from Vancouver?
I'm fantastic, Neely. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. I'm super excited to have you here with us today.
I as well. Really looking forward to our conversation today.
Definitely, yes. So, before we get started, Hermina, perhaps you can just briefly say a few words about yourself, about your role at Alida, and also about what Alida is doing.
Sure, fantastic. So, I've been with Alida for about almost 8 years now. Started in the world of talent acquisition and have been promoted and moved into the role that I'm currently in, which is the Senior Vice President of People and Culture. Alida is a CX platform that helps our customers manage their customer experience, their brand experience, their product experience, and most importantly, their employee experience. So we've been in business for over 20 years. I like to call us an old age startup. It's been a very fast moving, very busy time over the last 7.5 years.
Sounds like it. So, Hermina, you are passionate about all things talent, to put it simply. Can you maybe share a story with us of when you took a gamble on someone that wasn't necessarily the obvious choice, so to speak, but that turned out to be an absolutely talent to have join your organization?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think I've done it many times in my career, to be honest, but that's not to say that I haven't made some wrong decisions. I have, but those were very early on in my career. But yes, there are a few people that I've interviewed, and I remember calling the hiring manager with such excitement, letting them know that I found their person. And if it wasn't for other people's teams, I found them for my own team. But there are specific incidences that I remember that were outside of Alida. I used to work with other customers or other clients in terms of hiring for their organizations. And I remember taking a chance on an individual and who were with a company that I hadn't had the opportunity to build some trust with because I was newly working with them. And we hired this gentleman that had the right experiences, but perhaps he lacked in the number of years of experience which this company was looking for. And I looked at just his background and his hunger and desire in terms of wanting to work. He had a family. I think he had like four or five children. He was really committed and passionate about the work that he was doing. And so I pretty much fully endorsed his hiring. And the hiring, the partners that I was working with at that time were very much looking for another type of candidate, another candidate that they were interested in. I took a gamble. I went to the director of HR at that time and told them all the reasons why I think they should hire the candidate that I was working with and kind of endorsing. And I gave him my rationale why. First, he said no, because of course I was an external recruiter. But the next day I got a call and they decided to move with that candidate. The exciting thing about that story is that I can't obviously disclose the client, but I think 6 months into the role, he received Employee of the Year. And he has received that award consistently for like over 5-6 years. And that story was probably about 8 years ago, and he's still there. He's still at that company today. So
wow, that is an awesome success story, if we can call it like that, right?
Yes.
I think you can call it like that. Yes.
Sometimes you have to go with your gut, right? And it's like what they say: when you know, you know. Yeah,
Absolutely. I'd like to touch on something, Hermina, that of course you have a lot of experience in talent acquisition. And when we look at a talent acquisition strategy, what would you say are some of the most important elements?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Neely. I think there are a number of things, but at the basic level, you need to understand the entire life cycle and journey of a candidate to an employee, and that actually has to be at the core of your strategy. A good understanding of the business goals and the corporate objectives are essential to any successful talent acquisition strategy. Streamlined recruitment process, and that includes everything from sourcing to hiring, and a strategy that or a process that the stakeholders all buy into and understand. And then good technology that really helps with managing all your candidates and ensuring that you're getting back to them on a timely basis. But once you have all those things in place in terms of a recruitment strategy, the technology, and it's aligned with your company objectives, you have to have the right talent acquisition professionals. You have to have the right recruiters. They have to be people who think like marketers but act like sales professionals. Everyone thinks they can recruit, but not everyone can. You truly have to love people and what's best for them in order to be an amazing recruiter. So I think those are some of the elements that are required to have an essential talent acquisition strategy.
That seems to make complete sense, to be honest with you. I wanted to zoom in as well on the candidate experience, especially in today's environment where I think many companies had to shift to a candidate experience that is mostly virtual right now. But let's start first with, in your opinion, what makes or breaks a candidate experience?
Yeah, I think, well, there's a lot of things that can contribute to that, but I think in order for everything to go smoothly, you need to have a strong interlock with all the people that are involved in providing a strong employee experience. For us at Alida, it means that we have to have a strong partnership and tons of collaboration with the IT and facility teams. If you don't have that interlock, those things don't work well, because it's not just HR managing the process, right? So it's working closely with IT to ensuring that people receive their laptops and their cell phones and those types of things on time, and working with facilities, of course, especially during the pandemic where there was delays in shipments and those types of things. Sometimes we have to apologize because there are some things that were out of our control, but you have to have a strong interlock between facilities and IT and HR.
Yeah, it really is a collaboration between various departments. Now, this is something I heard the other day when I was talking to someone, Hermina. Basically, what he was saying is that when it comes to candidate experience, we have so much technology nowadays. And so, of course, we can have an opinion of whether or not that is a good thing, all that technology being there. However, he said that what the technology does bring is it allows us a certain level of personalization when it comes to the candidate experience. Is that something that you see as well?
Yes, I think so. We use an applicant tracking system that allows us to, manage all our candidates, but to have those kind of human interactions with them. But actually beyond that, we don't leverage much technology yet, as in like AI and those types of things. But as we continue to grow and scale, we will definitely be looking at those types of things. But for me right now, like everything, especially with Zoom, it is really the personal connection, right? Because people are looking for that connection, and it's really hard to give people a good understanding of the vibe of an office because they're not in an office, right? So definitely have to leverage technology from that perspective and make sure that, you are communicating with passion and energy and all those things for that to come over technology, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is interesting that you mentioned that as well, because when we look at candidate experience, things like, for instance, in-person interviews, seeing the offices, being able to feel what it's like to be in the offices, and also maybe talk to future colleagues. These are things that for many companies at the moment aren't possible anymore, but they had a big impact on a candidate experience. Can you maybe share how you have been trying to deal with these things at Alida when things are now more remote?
Yeah, that's a great question. So over the pandemic, Neely, to be honest, we hired over 162 individuals last year. And we did that all remotely, right? We were all sitting remotely, especially in the Vancouver office as of March 13th last year. Or 2020. And we were very fortunate that we had a very strong IT infrastructure in place so that we were able to go remotely instantaneously. And so working on Zoom was kind of natural to us. But I think in terms of the candidate and employee experience, I think one of the things that the leadership has really supported us is that they've been actively present in the recruitment process themselves. So when it comes to bringing in some, top talent into the organization, the interviews are not just with myself; they're with the leaders of the executive leadership team. Whereas our CEO actually participates in most of the interviews as well, whether it comes to our customer success folks or sales folks, and then our president of products is really integral in part in terms of bringing on software developers and those types of things. So it's been an all hands kind of approach in terms of everybody taking part in the candidate experience, especially when it early on from the interviewing stages.
Another thing that I found super interesting, and I saw you mention it somewhere, is that you're also trying to create really awesome experiences for people when they shift from being a candidate to an employee. And I thought that was interesting because often we spend a lot of time on candidate experience and employee experience, but that shift is actually an interesting, let's say, in between. Now, one of the things I think that plays an important role in that shift is onboarding. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, onboarding is it's make or break for employees, right? I don't know the stat off the top of my head right now, but they say that depending on the type of experience that an employee has right at the onboarding stages, allows for longer retention or their longer engagement within the organization. So from an IT perspective, for us, we do actually have an onboarding portal that once we press hire in our applicant tracking system. There's this, an API integration between our applicant tracking system and our HRS system, and we use Bamboo HR. That kind of kickstarts the process internally, and then all the departments get notified, whether that's IT and facilities and those things, and information gets sent to the candidate. They have the opportunity to log into this portal where they can learn more about the organization, and there's a welcome message there. There's questions that they have to fill out so that they are prepared before they actually start their first day of work. So all their personal information, all that stuff is kind of filled out. So we take a very active approach on that. And actually, we just revamped our onboarding portal, and we'll be launching it next week for some of our new hires.
What has been your biggest learning when it comes to onboarding people fully remotely?
Well, the importance of communication and the importance of ensuring that people feel welcome. And so we're very fortunate. Again, we have very active managers who are involved in the hiring process as well, because HR may take do the heavy lifting at the beginning, but then it's up to the managers to ensure that people are kind of assimilated into the culture of the organization. So we do have a buddy program as well. So a new hire will come in and they get partnered with a buddy, and that buddy will speak to them about everything that's not work related, right? In the world where we were in the offices, the buddy was responsible for telling them where to go for lunch, the great coffee places, right? And those types of things. Now the buddy's responsible for telling them what great Slack channel to jump into, right? And who to connect with and those different things. So it's become different, but we've been managing it pretty well. So I think the onboarding portal, the buddy program, and to be honest, I'm a bit biased here, but an amazing HR team. We have amazing HR generalists who do a really great job of conducting HR orientations on their first day. The IT team also does an orientation so that people know how to use their equipment, making sure that they have the right signatures and those types of things. So when all that comes together, it's a really great experience for candidates who then become our employees.
Yeah, it sounds like it, absolutely. So, Hermina, I wanted to slightly change tack here and touch on employer branding, something that I'm super interested about. And I think that you have a lot to tell us about employer branding as well. Maybe we can start with, what would you say are the 3 most important ingredients for a great employer branding strategy?
Obviously I can say that the culture of the company, the values and the people are really important. But for me, it really starts, and it's all encompassing. It's a unique employee value proposition that describes who you are, what we stand for, how we do what we do, why we do what we do, and what's in it for the employee. This message has to resonate with people, and it has to inspire them. It's all encompassing of making sure that your culture is up and center, and that you're, speaking effectively about the experiences that people have within an organization. So I think once you have a very refined, unique employee value proposition, that all plays into employer branding. I think the need to have a unique EVP culture and awesome people to work has been amplified. People have had time to really, look at the pandemic. People have really had a time to assess and reflect on what's important, and understand the fragility of life and time. So they want to ensure they work and how they work, and their time matters. So it's become even more prevalent to ensure that our employer brand inspires people.
Have you noticed, by the way, Hermina, that there is a difference here in terms of candidates from different generations? For instance, do some candidates from a certain generation, in your opinion, attach a lot more value to what your EVP is and what your values are, and whether or not they correspond with their own core values? Or have you not seen any differences there?
Oh no, I've definitely seen that. I've definitely seen that. We work with a pretty young demographic in our organization, and I think mostly there's a whole crew of our people that are between the ages of 25 and 39. And to those people, it really matters, right? It has to be purpose-driven work, and they have to believe in the product. They have to believe in the company. They have to believe in the leadership. So I think it's absolutely something that has shifted, whereas maybe in the past, things might have been a little bit different, but now more than ever, especially during the pandemic, people have to feel proud of what they do and where they work. So I think definitely that is something that is really important.
Yeah, this is something I heard from a colleague actually not that long ago. He said to me that where before candidates may have wanted to work for a tech company, but now apparently, especially candidates from younger generations, they want to work for a tech company that does something that corresponds with them having a purpose in a way, and them feeling like they're contributing to doing some good for society. So it's interesting to hear that you're noticing the same thing.
Absolutely. I just think because of the time that we're in, there's only so much precious time that we have. So we spend more time at work than, especially now with the pandemic, right? People are one door away from their office and their kitchen and their living rooms. So it's even more important that people have a passion for the company that they're working with. So now it really, really matters to people, and they want to spend their time carefully. So I think you're absolutely dead on right there, dead on with that.
So we're slightly moving on here. So we talked about candidate experience, and then we touched on employer branding. Now we're going to get to hiring candidates. And something that I was wondering about is, when you're hiring candidates, what do you feel is most important? Is it potential? Is it skill? Is it culture fit, or perhaps it's a mix of all of those?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. To be honest, Neely, I think all 3 are important. For example, during the resume screening process, I assess the candidate experience as it relates to our requirements for the role. But when I'm conducting my interviews with the candidates, I'm assessing whether or not they have the right DNA. We were very fortunate a few years ago. We did a project, and that was really to look at our folks and understand what some of the most successful ingredients are of some of the most successful people at our organization. From there, we were able to develop a DNA, a list of attributes that some of our most successful employees had. So after conducting the analysis, we realized that people had to possess grit, tenacity, and resiliency. They had to act with humility, lead with empathy. They're passionate about their life, their job. They were naturally curious, wanted to understand the why behind things. They had a sense of urgency. They liked change. They had the ability to pivot quickly and think on their feet, and were flexible in their approach. These are an 8. Like, the DNA is an 8. There's something that you can't change. You either have it or you don't. So we built our entire recruitment strategy around these attributes, and aligned our questions to better assess some of those attributes. Our recruiters conduct the same interviews day in and day out. The questions are all the same. This allows for consistency, removes kind of any type of bias, and we're really able to assess whether or not the people that we're hiring have the right attributes to join our organization. So I think it's a combination of all 3: potential, skill, culture fit.
So interesting to hear that you really were able to build your company's DNA, and that you're now able to try and find people that have that DNA. And besides that, there are so many things that I heard you say that I keep here popping up a lot these days, like curiosity, but also empathy is also something that I keep hearing. So very nice to hear that it's something that you are also seeing at Alida. Now, you mentioned very briefly bias, and I think it's interesting because when we're talking about hiring these days, and obviously hiring goes often hand in hand with technology, and then when we talk about the intersection of technology, especially AI-driven technology, and hiring. So many companies are now trying to limit as much as possible, of course, bias in their selection process. Technology can be a great asset, of course, in that regard. It can help you, for instance, go through high volumes of resumes. And this is a great thing because it opens up the hiring process in a way to more candidates. And so you have a more diverse talent pool, if you like. But to what extent do you think that the technology is better at doing this than a human recruiter? Is it better than humans?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's an area that I have yet to explore, to be honest. Fortunately, we don't have the capability or luxury of this technology, but as we continue to grow, and we will definitely need to invest in this technology to scale and to kind of like speeding up our recruitment process. But right now, in terms of removing the bias, we are trying to educate our hiring managers in terms of ensuring that there's, no similar to me bias, or there's no other biases, right? By educating them. But we would definitely benefit from a technology that would help us allow to do that, but we haven't gotten to that point yet.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned earlier about making sure that all candidates get the same questions and get the same questions in the same order, I mean, that is, of course, also a great way of, one, trying to minimize bias, and at the same time also offer the same experience to each candidate.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that way, when you're benchmarking and comparing the candidates, you're comparing them on the same interview, right? On the same experience. And so that's kind of the reason why we created that. So from from a traditional standpoint, right now we're using, to your point, interviews and those types of things. But as we continue to grow, we definitely will be looking at some AI tools to help us leverage that.
So I guess we should touch base then once you start doing that, Hermina.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to.
Okay, so we are kind of now getting towards the end already of our conversation, but there are a few more questions that I still have for you, Hermina. So one is, as we said, you have worked in talent acquisition for quite a while, so you've got quite a lot of experience. Now, when it comes to the candidates that you see, and what they value in a future employer, we briefly touched on this, but what do you believe has been the biggest shift if you look at candidates today and candidates, let's say, 10 years ago?
Wow. I think we already touched upon it, but I think the biggest change I've seen is that employees want purpose-driven work. They want to make an impact, they want to matter, and they want companies to invest in them. Just as employees are investing their, 40-hour days, 40-hour weeks, sometimes maybe even 50, 60 right now in terms of in terms of the pandemic that we're living in. But I think people want to matter, and they want to work at companies that invest in their learning and development. And so those are really some of the questions that we get asked right now, right? Like in terms of employees, what is it that we're doing for them? How do we contribute to their growth and their careers? Those are all things that people want to understand before they actually join companies. So companies have to work hard to ensure that they're providing that kind of skills growth and development. We're fortunate. We've partnered with LinkedIn Learning, so we're able to, utilize that and help develop career paths for our employees. And sometimes it's about learning skills that they need for the job, but other times it's about learning skills perhaps for their next job, or learning skills for other things that they may be interested in. And so LinkedIn Learning allows us to be able to kind of provide that to our employees. So I think learning and development, career growth, development, those are all important things to employees.
Yeah, totally. That is also something that is popping up a lot these days, and that is important for candidates. If we now don't look back, but try and look into our crystal ball and look ahead a little bit, what do you think will be the biggest shift that we'll see in talent acquisition over the next 2-3 years?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, Neely, but there are a few things, but I think the biggest shift will be the power of the voice of the employee. I mean, we've seen it already in terms of where we are today, but I think that's going to become more and more powerful. Lucky for me that I work for a company that created a platform that allows us to collect feedback for employees and make decisions accordingly. And I wholeheartedly believe that companies that are truly people-centric will come out ahead. Times have changed for the better, and companies truly welcome and embrace the diverse, voices of the employees. So I think hearing the employee voice is going to be important. But I think what we look for in candidates has truly changed as well. As we move forward, we'll be looking at candidates holistically and understand their entire life experiences rather than just their work experience. It'll be about soft skills and not about credentials. It won't be about the schools that they attended or didn't attend. And diversity is something that will be top of mind. I mean, it's finally here now, and I think this will continue to kind of lead the way for us. So I think that's going to be something that's going to continue to shift. The second thing will be speed. And this is where, we were talking about AI and automation. Right now, we're all recruiting for the same talent, and the level of speed combined with an amazing recruitment experience will be key differentiators for companies. And lastly, I believe that remote work and virtual recruitment are here to stay, especially with companies moving to hybrid models. Companies will need to shift their approach and ensure that they hire candidates who are able to work remotely, and then also managers have to be able to manage people in distributed teams. So those are some of the shifts I think that will take place.
Yes, nice. And I think the last shift that you mentioned, that will probably actually be a long-term effect of the impact that the pandemic has had, right, on talent acquisition.
Yes, absolutely. I think, lucky for us, I think, as I mentioned, virtual recruitment is here to stay, right? The days of the handshakes have gone, and it has to be the eye contact on Zoom. For even myself, I still have difficulty. I have 3 screens here, and sometimes the camera's over here and the screen's over here, right? So we have to become better at getting better at that and having that kind of presence when you're on the screen, and to be able to engage people on screen, because I think it'll be an environment of both. There'll be some people in the office and some people continue to work remotely. So managing both will be really essential to company successes.
And something else that I noticed when you were saying what could happen in the future was actually quite interesting as well. And I'm not sure if you noticed it, but you said that we might actually get a more holistic view of candidates, and we won't just look at their work experience and what their life experience. And that actually beautifully comes back to the very start of our conversation, Hermina, because then you were talking about this person that you hired that, yes, may have had the right experience, but maybe not necessarily long enough. So in a way, what you were doing already back then might be the way forward in a few years from now, broadly speaking. So that was a nice one, I think.
Thanks, Neely. You don't even realize that you're doing that, but I think life experiences are really important, right? And then more and more people are speaking about those things. There's sometimes people deal with adversities in life that can really contribute to the person that they become. And somebody could be going to school academically and they're really great at that, but if they haven't had any of those life experiences, sometimes those people have a hard time dealing with difficult situations as they come up, right? So you have to put value in all the experiences that somebody has had, and look at what's made them become the person that they are. So I think if we can move in that direction, I think that'll be great for companies. It'll be great for employees, because then we have happier employees, you have happier companies, and then everything's a win-win for everyone.
Yes, absolutely. I think that is a really beautiful ending to our conversation, Hermina. I maybe have one last thing though, because what we like to do as well is to ask our guests for what we call an epic fail and an epic win. So I'll give you maybe a few moments to think about it. But so if you could think of anything that really for you was an epic win or your biggest learning and maybe an epic fail, which also is a learning moment, of course.
Oh my God, that's a really great question because I truly believe that failures make for better things, right? I would say for myself, it would probably have to be from a personal perspective, more than from a professional perspective. You know, personally, a long time ago, I made a wrong choice on a partner that led me down it was a very tumultuous relationship, right? I will just say, and I've never actually publicly spoken about it, but I was lucky that I walked out of that relationship, to be very honest, to be the person and that kind of contributed to the person that I am today. So, I mean, yes, you can go back and say, you know, that was a wrong choice in the partner that I made at that point. But now when I look back, I also understand and am thankful for that experience because of that mistake or because of choosing the wrong person, it's allowed also for me to flourish as an individual. So that's probably an epic fail, but it's also been one of my greatest learning moments as well.
Yeah, beautiful. And then yeah, that is a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And then if you have an epic win, we can.
Yeah.
So if anything comes to mind.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Where I am today and where I am right now is an epic win. And what I mean by that is that, you know, for 7 odd years, I've been working for our Alida, which was vision critical prior to it becoming Alida. I started off in a contract position and I have excelled in my career. I think the best story that I have, or the most epic win, is the change that happened with the C-suite and the leadership. Our new CEO, Ross Wainwright, who came into the organization, you know, we had one conversation. And of course, as you know, things change quickly when there's new leadership coming in. But there was that one conversation that Ross and I had at the very beginning, and we met each other for about 30 seconds, or maybe it was even a minute. I don't know. But that one conversation changed my entire life, my career trajectory at the company. You know, he took a chance on me. He supported my growth and development, took me out of talent acquisition and moved me into the role of VP people and culture. And he always says to me, Hermina, you gave me all the reasons why you couldn't do the job or why you weren't the right person for the job. But he said, have faith in yourself. Trust that you can do the job. I think you can do it. You have my full support and backing. And that one conversation changed my life. You know, I got promoted into a new role. We went into the world of the pandemic. You know, so people working remotely. We went through Black Lives Matter movement, which was incredibly painful time for the world and for the companies that we operate in. And so having to do all that during a pandemic and, you know, managing all the change management that was happening with the new leadership coming into an organization was a lot. But last year, like if I look back at some of the successes, being able to hire over 162 individuals, we won 2 comparably awards at the end of the year for best culture, for, you know, diversity. And not to say that because we had the most diverse population in the organization, but the diverse population in our organization had great experiences with the company. Earlier this year, we won, you know, best company outlook from Comparably. We won best product team, best marketing team. And actually, just today, we announced that we are now officially certified as great places to work. So that we just announced to our employee base today. So if I look back at the entire year, it has been one hell of a year. It's been an amazing ride. So for me, that has been an epic success.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And it sounds like an ongoing epic success, to be honest. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neely. Yeah, like I said, I've been very blessed. I'm really privileged to work where I work and the people that I work with. So it's easy to speak about it.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up our conversation. So I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I learned a lot. And yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, Neely, for giving me this opportunity. It was fantastic to speak with you today also.